First of all, again, I want to plead, especially with the young believers here, that you must become a vital member of a local church. You must. It is not an option in Scripture. You will never be in the center of God's will unless you put yourself in a local church with biblical elders who are seeking to follow sola scriptura, who are simple men simply seeking to obey God in what is written. We see in verse 15, one of the most, I think, amazing passages for the local church, one of the most amazing passages with regard to our need of the day. And it says this, in verse 14, I am writing these things to you, hoping to come to you before long, but in case I am delayed, I write so that you will know how one ought to conduct himself in the household of God, which is the church of the living God. It is his church, his household. And the only way we can know how to conduct ourselves or to manage as ministers, as stewards, the bride of Christ is through what is written. And I just want to say this to you. I don't care how offensive it is to you. May I have grace, but may the zeal of the Lord also push me into saying this. If you go beyond what is written and follow your own cleverness, I can only say to you that your arrogance is overwhelming, and I fear for your soul. Do you not know that you will stand before God on that great day? And that mystery is great above all other mysteries. It is the one thing that captivates the heart of a man and will not let him go. Now, what is a mystery? As Dr. D.A. Carson set forth the other day, a mystery is a truth that was previously hidden but has now been revealed. It's interesting that in the Qumran documents and also in Jewish apocalyptic writings, that we see that they believed that the mystery was the secret plan of God that would be revealed in the last days, and some of them through the coming of the Messiah. And Paul says that time has come. That great mystery has been given to the church. And it has been given to us, the greatest of all truth, the greatest of all mysteries, far beyond anything that can be seen or spied or discovered in the universe. The greatest thing has been given to us. And when Paul says this, he says, by common confession, great is this mystery of godliness. It's a difficult passage. Is he talking about great is the mystery of our religion? It's a great possibility. This thing called Christianity, there is one great mystery that should captivate our heart and take first place always. But he could also be saying that this great mystery leads us to true piety, to true conformity to the heart and the will of God. The will of God. Now, what is that? He sets it forth. He who was revealed in the flesh was vindicated in the spirit, seen by angels, proclaimed among the nations, believed on in glory, taken up in the world in glory, believed on in the world, taken up in glory. Now, many people believe that Paul is borrowing here from a Christian hymn. It is possible, but because it's in this book, I know that it is inspired and it is true. Now, scholars look at this and sometimes they divide it into two stanzas. Each stanza has 3 lines. The first stanza, he was revealed in the flesh, was vindicated in the spirit, seen by angels. The second stanza would be proclaimed among the nations, believed on in the world, and taken up in glory. I was preaching last week in California and I had to preach on Ephesians 2:1. We were dead in our trespasses and sins. And the only way I could communicate what that text is really saying is this. Imagine yourself as a dead and rotting corpse laying at the bottom of a cesspool that was created by the refuse and the rot flowing out of your own body. So here you are, dead in your trespasses and sins, in the realm of all your transgressions, and sins. And in the incarnation, the Son of God comes and wades that cesspool. And then on Calvary, he dives in headfirst after his bride. He takes her in his arms, as filthy as she is, and he pulls her out of that cesspool. And he cleanses her with his blood. And he puts his mouth on her mouth and breathes life into her. You see, there is enough power in just this to propel a regenerated heart throughout into an eternity of piety. He was vindicated in the Spirit. What does that mean? Well, in a sense, during his ministry, he was vindicated in the Spirit, in that the Spirit was with him, doing marvelous works no man has ever done, vindicating him. The works that I do, he says. If you don't believe me, look at the works. But primarily the idea here is the resurrection. And we see that, don't we? Listen to Romans 1:4. He was declared the Son of God with power by the resurrection from the dead. It doesn't mean he became the Son of God, but he was declared to be. He was proven to be. If you're waiting for God to open up the sky to speak to you with regard to the validity of Christ and his death, then you'll wait in vain. God's already spoken. He raised him from the dead. And that's the only evidence he's ever going to give you. The greatest problem in all the world is if God is just, he cannot forgive you. That is the great dilemma of Scripture. All of Scripture is geared toward answering this one question. If God is just, how can he forgive wicked men and still be just? And the answer is found in the death of his Son on Calvary, where he bore the sin of his people. He bore his bride's sin. And then all the wrath of God against her was poured out on him. And through his suffering and death, the offended justice of God was satisfied and wrath was appeased. If that's not in your gospel, you don't preach the gospel. You do not preach the gospel. He was seen by angels. What is the meaning of that? Well, we know that angels were there at his birth. We know that angels comforted him during Gethsemane. We know he could have called legions of angels to come down and help him. We know that angels announced his resurrection, but I think this goes much farther than this. It's talking about the universal or cosmic significance of Christ's work. What stupid men ignore and cannot appreciate, the highest created beings in the universe stretch forth their neck to constantly gaze upon. This to them is the wonder of wonders. Then he goes to the next stanza, proclaimed among the nations. I mean, something big is coming in verse 3, but what do we get? Men who forbid marriage and advocate abstaining from foods. And then we look at that, especially as Americans, and go, well, we have no fear of apostasy. We all marry, and I've looked at most of you, you definitely don't abstain from food. You need to abstain a little bit more, actually, to be biblical. So I didn't want you to think that I was getting too nice. So what does this have to do? I mean, how do you put these two things together? They don't make sense. But if you sit there long enough and look at it, you see, wow, I am so in danger of apostasy. The church is so filled, or not the church, but the expression of Christianity in America is so filled with apostasy. What is this saying? I mean, what does it really, really mean? What he's saying is this: anytime you put anything in front of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Anytime you place something higher, you give more emphasis to something other than the gospel of Jesus Christ, you are committing apostasy. At least to some degree, to some kind. Let me give you an example. There are churches that can set above the gospel a certain type of morality or legalism. They're all about rules. Then there, I homeschool, and I love homeschoolers and homeschool movements, but sometimes I've gone in to do conferences, and honestly, it looks more like a Pride and Prejudice movie than it does Christianity. It's all about the way you dress, and it's all about the way you talk, and it's all about doing calligraphy, and it's all what? No. I had a pastor who called me one time and he said, I want you to come preach in my church because I think we got a lot of lost people in the membership. And I said, well, maybe I ought to preach to you if you've got a lot of lost people in the membership. And I said, what do you mean? He said, man, my church has got a lot of homeschoolers. And I go, brother, I homeschool. You homeschool. So what are you saying? He goes, I got people in my church that if you ask them to stand up and give their testimony, they'll say, 5 years ago, I found homeschooling. What's happening there? The gospel is being put down and something else is being given importance. What do you talk about most? Preacher, what do you preach about most? I've been accused sometimes of only having one sermon. All I ever do is go to Romans 3 and teach on propitiation. I said, yeah, and I've read hundreds, maybe thousands of Spurgeon's sermons, and if he took some obscure text anywhere in the Bible, he made it back to propitiation.